The Westminster Standards. This video covers material related to the Westminster Confession of Faith, Chapter 24, of marriage and divorce. A possible definition of marriage could be that marriage is an exclusive covenant relationship instituted by God at creation, in which one man and one woman commit themselves to each other for life, and on the basis of their solemn vows are thus united, becoming one flesh. This view of marriage would rule out adultery, polygamy, homosexuality, premarital sex, and lust. Marriage was instituted by God at creation. Some of the reasons why God instituted marriage: for His own glory, for the mutual help of husband and wife, especially in the propagation of children, companionship, and the proper fulfillment of our sexual desires, for the establishment of the family as an important part of society, as one means of growing the church, and as a reflection of His covenant with His people and of the relationship between Christ and His church. The Confession states, based on Leviticus 18, that marriage between close relations is forbidden. And based on 2 Corinthians 6:14, which says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers," the Confession states that believers are not to marry unbelievers. What about divorce? Divorce, for any and all reasons, does not accurately reflect God's covenant relationship with His people. So how are we to understand the fact that God not only allowed divorce in the Old Testament, see Deuteronomy 24, but He Himself divorced Israel by sending them into exile because of her spiritual adultery and willful desertion? First, Jesus notes that the provision of divorce in Deuteronomy 24 was given because of the hardness of human hearts. This indicates that divorce is not to be the norm, but a tragic exception due to our living in a fallen world. Second, in Deuteronomy 24, the certificate of divorce was actually intended to protect the woman. Her husband could not simply discard her without allowing her to remarry. And third, even though God divorced His people for their adultery and desertion of Him, He demonstrates His great love by promising to restore them as His people and bring them back from exile. So marriage for life is the norm, but there are some circumstances in which divorce is legitimately permitted by God because of us living in a fallen condition. Two of those circumstances are sexual immorality and willful desertion. Yet even in those cases, one is not obligated to divorce the offending spouse. Divorce may be permitted in those cases, but it is not commanded. The Westminster Confession of Faith suggests this when it says that nothing but adultery or such willful desertion as can no way be remedied by the church or civil magistrate is cause sufficient for dissolving the bond of marriage. In other words, even in the case of adultery and willful desertion, there may be a way for the couple to reconcile. One more thing. The last sentence of the 1646 version of Chapter 24, Section 4 stated, "The man may not marry any of his wife's kindred nearer in blood than he may of his own, nor the woman of her husband's kindred nearer in blood than of her own." The original confession forbade a man or a woman from marrying a close relative of their spouse after that spouse had died. The 1887 revision deleted that final sentence. American Presbyterians increasingly questioned whether Scripture actually prohibited such marriages, and so they removed that prohibition because they believed that it was not a necessary inference from Scripture. If you have any questions, make sure you bring them to my attention so that we can discuss them.